Hi, my name is Patrick, but you can call me 26, and what we're going to do today is we are going to talk about the new modifier introduced for iOS 26, the Glass Modifier. Okay, so let's talk about liquidGlass. Now, we could apply liquidGlass to various views, and in this case, you're just going to start off by putting it on a text view, and when we do this, add this modifier, it will render a shape around the anchored view with the liquidGlass material. And it applies the sort of a foreground effect that creates the liquid glass. By default, it always creates a capsule around it, right? The shape it takes is always a capsule, right? So if you want it not to be the capsule, you need to change. So if you do that, you're going to see a sort of capsule around Hello World, like so. And if you don't want it to be the capsule, if you don't want it to be a capsule, what you could do is you need to especially say that you want it to be something different. So you could come here and say something like this. This would mean that it's in a rounded, a sort of rounded rectangle, like so. And to make it a bit better, we could see dot tint. We could say tint like so, and the tint here is going to be dot blue, like so, right? So we do that, and now you can see the actual liquid glass has been applied in blue, like so, right? And the next thing we could do is we could apply a sort of glass effect, make it interactive, right? So what we could do is we could come here and say something like regular and then say dot interactive, right? So if we do that and now we can click it, the view will act like a button, right? It won't be a button, but when you click it, it will sort of have the clickiness of a sort of button, right? And that should clue you in that there is actually a type of button that when you have a button, you can just give it a button style that is going to be liquid glass. Let's have a look at that. Now, the next thing we could have a look at is maybe look at a button, right? And see how the liquid glass effect is going to be applied to a button, right? So after this text, we could come here and put our button there. And then you're going to see a button with the words click me, right? And the liquid glass effect it has a ripple effect on it. And the next thing, we're going to look at buttons again, is the most visible component or view that has a change due to liquid glass has been the slider. Now, when you apply it to a slider, the thumb does become transparent, making you see the track underneath when you're actually playing with when you're actually moving the slider, right? So what that looks like is we could have this. Let's just have a slider, pretty straightforward, nothing to it. Come here and paste this, and this is going to be the slider. And now we have this slider, and what you can see is now when we touch the thumb and start moving, you can see the track underneath actually moving along, right? So the slider is exactly the same, except now that the thumb, and even when you go over the name or the text to the left of it, right, you can see that the thumb does go over it and becomes transparent, right? So the thumb does become transparent, right? And when it's on there, and you can even make it move to views that are right next to the slider. And that's how it actually works. Another thing you could do is you could maybe, when you're applying it to, let's have a look at how it can apply to. Now, the next thing we could do is we could use the glass effect container to apply animations, right? And we could use a glass effect container, and it has a bunch of options you could use. And this can be used to blend together animations and make groups that are under the glass effect container animate together, right? So in this case, what you're going to do is you're going to have a button, and then you're going to put two views, and then in the views, we're going to put a glass effect container and see how applying an animation to views under the glass effect container, how that makes them blend together, right? So what we have here are going to be two views, and the views are just going to be the heart. And when you hit the button, the animations are going to blend together, right? So we have a glass effect container, and we put some spacing between them, and we have a button next to them to control them, with state, of course, to handle everything, right? So if we hit this, you will see that the buttons do meld together and fuse together. The views, right? So both views are actually under the glass effect container here, right? And if we do this, you can see that it does apply the animation, and all we are saying that the glass effect should have a transition, and we say the match geometry, and we use the properties to anchor it, right? So we do this, and you can see that they come together very beautifully and do the same, and they move apart, right? And there's another option that we could also put, and this is going to be where we customize the transition, and the transition in question is just going to be the identity transition, right? So what that looks like is if we come here and do this, and then we hit the button, you will see that it doesn't move, right? It's a bit jarring, right? It just disappears. And when it's moving there, it sort of moves into view and then moves outside, right? Where it's supposed to be, right? So it's a bit different from the previous one, right? So the previous one is this, right? Which sort of melds them together slowly using the position as an anchor, as opposed to the other one, right? So that is in effect, or that is what the glass effect container does. And that is a high level overview of what the glass effect looks like in iOS 26. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.